point, if you're ever teaching the stuff, you'll find that your grids get amplified in your body because your higher levels of self are going to do it. Your heart seals. Even if you're having trouble, because sometimes people can't follow all the steps at first, when it's first run through, when somebody's verbally running it through, it will not matter if you're with a genuine transmitter, somebody who has their shield activated. What they do with, and they do it with Phil now too, he's been teaching Kathara in Sarasota and a couple other places now for a while. Your shield will actually stretch out like a rug underneath the room, and it will create a base where when people, anybody in the audience, even if they lose track of the steps as they're going, the intention to send the thing down to activate it, you have a support field underneath it, so it will activate your heart shield. Once it's activated, now that the planetary grids themselves sustain it for longer, you'll have it for about a week, which means you only have to amp it every once in a while. Just give it a kick, a frequency, use, and you can play with the number of points on your star. But I suggest start low, because you don't want to overload, because if you bring too much frequency in, it'll shut it down. Or it can actually make your shield go down, because you brought too much frequency. You can simply hold the image of the 12-pointed three-dimensional star, exhale it down in to the earth's core, up to below the feet, and then pull it up. It's a feel. You'll get a feel for it. You can activate it this quick when it's already been officially activated through the long process. The more you use this, like if you use this process once a week, put it on a tape, put the headphones on, listen to it, you will recreate this on your own, okay? And that's when you try to listen to the steps, because that's when you're on your own with it. It's between you and your higher parts, and there's not a rug underneath you with more hard frequency. But you still have the planetary threads to work with. You do that even once a week, and then use on a daily basis. I do it when I wake up in the morning, usually around lunchtime, to get that saggy kind of feeling. And in the evening before I go to bed, especially waking and sleeping ends, because that's when your astral fields are more open. That's when you want to make sure they're fortified. Simply drop the fast one down and pull, literally pull the pillar up. This will amplify it. You can go probably for, you use that once a week, and on a daily basis use just the quick ones. You can sustain yourself, probably indefinitely, if you remember to do the long one once a week. All right? It will get where you don't have to do it for once a month once the planetary grids get activated more, because the planetary grids will probably hold that for you. But in the meantime, you need to be responsible for manually keeping it up, or there's nobody to get upset with if it comes down and your fields get exposed again. It will also create and accelerate DNA activations, which is a good thing. And it won't do it out of sequence, which means you'll have Kundalini activations. You'll start to feel current running down here at the base of the spine. And that current can feel really strange sometimes. It feels like almost, first time I had a major one, I remember I was on a heavy fast track because I had to get my fields activated to bring the Kathara program through so I could do that rug underneath people. So it felt like a worm crawling up my spine. It had consciousness to it. It was like, oh, ew. It felt like mercury in a thermometer crawling up my spine. And then there was this awareness that, yes, it's conscious, like a conscious worm, but it's me. It's my consciousness, you know? So it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And it can give you pressure at the base of the spine a little bit with stretching out. You just stretch. The legs need to be able to run the frequency. If you start to get uncomfortable with it, it will shut down enough to where it doesn't overload your body. What we'll do when we come back from break is we're going to get into triadic phase currents. Because this is the major part of healing. Now that you know how to run things in your own body, there's a practice by which you learn to project that. We'll cover the Kathara points, and we'll get into learning about the triadic phase currents, why they're called triadic phase currents, and why they're more powerful healing currents than anything that anybody's been using on this planet for over 200,000 years. We have access to them now for the first time since 210,000 to 16 BC, or 8,000 to 16 BC, excuse me. It's 210,000 years ago. Years ago to BC translation. I have to be careful of my dates. Anyway, enjoy our coffee break. We had about a 15-minute break, and then we will get into the next phase. And these are points on the bodies that do specific things in relation to the Kathara grids in the body. And before we broke for our dinner break thing design, that it ended up being, we ran the technique number 2, which was the hard, seal, and the liquid light cleanse. So we just began what you did, in fact, by running that process, you just activated chakra 12. All right, now others of you who have been doing this before, even if you had found it in one of the books and were using it, you already had your chakra 12 activated. But for those of you who just did this technique with us before we wrote, you now have an activated chakra 12 in that process. So you learn how to begin running the current in the body, how to begin bringing in the D12 Maharata current into the body. Now, once it gets in the body, there's a lot of things you can do with it. In Kathara level 1, we're going to ultimately teach you how to regulate whether it's going to go down into the core and stay in the core of the template in the Kathara grid, which is the process of recoding. This is where you're holographically recoding the imprints that are held in your core template in your Kathara grid. This is where you get more permanent healing results, because you're going to the causal level, where the cause, the action, whatever the action or disease is happening, will be held in the Kathara centers. So if you want more permanent healing, you always go and you direct the energy to make sure it stays in the template for a while. So the D12 frequency has a chance to recalibrate the Kathara centers. Now, there's another set of points that will actually let those Kathara centers work like little windows, where you're opening them, and you can amplify that opening by this first series of points. There's a second series of Kathara points that will close the windows while still allowing some of the D12 current to run, but it'll kick the current up into the axiotonal lines and into the chakra system, where you can get revitalization of the outer field levels, which will give you more rapid results. They're not as permanent if you just use the Kathara centers or points that bring the energy out. If you use them alone, you can get a burst of energy. It'll revitalize you, and temporarily it might help to, get rid of a condition. But it will go back to the old condition until you've used both. So what we do when we're running the currents, we use both sets of lines, or points. One, to open up as fully as possible the Kathara core template. We use those points in the body by manually stimulating them, by rubbing them. When you rub, you're putting electrical impulse from one place to another. When we activate these points in the body, simply by gently rubbing them, we're opening up conduits in the Kathara grid itself that will allow it to pull more and hold more frequency. So when we begin, if we were going to begin a healing session, if we were going to begin even running our own liquid light cleanse, we would ideally, start with amplifying the ability of that current to make change by running the first set of points, the 14 sequence 1 Kathara points. When we were all done with running our current, but we wanted to give an extra boost to the outer fields to help us feel better more immediately, then we would switch to, after you're all done running the current, it did what it needed to recode for that particular session in the deeper grid. Then you use the second series of points to, before you stop running the energy, kick it up into the outer field to replenish the chakras and to replenish the axiotonal lines to give you more immediate benefit. So whenever we do a client healing session, which is what this will wrap up to by the end of tonight, this is where our blankets come in handy, where we're going to go through the steps. It's a six steps that you would activate your mentor and activate your current, and then use a procedure to transmit your frequency. Now, before you can transmit your frequency, you have to learn about triadic phase currents, which we will learn after we get through the Kathara points. The first thing I'd like to do, we can go to the next graph, because that has a big one. Okay? It's page 69 on that stage. This is page 129 in your book. This is a bigger version of what was just up there. All right. These are the 14 sequence 1 Kathara points. These 14 points in the body, when you stimulate them, will allow the Kathara grid in the body to open even further to draw a stronger pull of energy once you activate the current. Now, your basic Maharata current is activated because you did the Maharaj seal with your light cleanse. In fact, you can do just the Maharaj seal portion alone without even going through pulling it out through your Kathara centers, and you would still have enough frequency to run a basic healing. So you can actually use the Maharaj seal without even running with the light cleanse. But now that you have that activated, these points will begin the process of letting it build in your system. If you're going to facilitate healing in someone else, you need as much current in your own system as possible. So before a healing session with someone, you would activate your current through your Maharaj current first, with your Maharaj shield. Then you would go into these points and stimulate them. The person would be laying down. You can do these on yourself, too. Now, simply, what you need to be an octopus for this, you use them in sequence, and the sequence is important. It's the sequencing of where the placements are. 1, 2, 3, 4, that, and then you come back up to 1. You're directing current in a very specific way by doing that. You're telling them to open with a natural rhythm that will allow the currents. What it does in the Kathara centers is as you open these points and stimulate them, it creates a little bit of an electrical hole inside of the Kathara center that once you have that current beginning in your body, it will draw more stronger. So we're going to do that by simply, and it's really easy. You can take the fingers of either hand or both. I like to use both. Start with point 1. It's right at the top of the head. The crown. And gently rub in circles. You can go one way and then the other. Just rub it. Try to feel what it feels like. Because we're so used to, brushing our hair and things like that. Our scalp tends to be desensitized. Most of our bodies tend to be desensitized as far as subtle energy. Try to feel if you get any tingling. Because when you really get the currents running, you'll feel a tingle. Because as you're rubbing it, it's allowing some of the smaller meridian lines to open up and bring it in.
Is it here or is it back here?
Now, it's right about here. It's where the crown chakra comes up. It's right in front of the fontanelle, which would be the baby. That's what they call the soft spot. It's like right in front. And what I do is I kind of take the pads of my fingers, so I get the whole thing.
Where's it there?
Yeah, you can use there, but what I suggest, take 3 fingers. This is the way if you can't find a spot, and this is what's tricky with clients. It will be in a different position in everybody. Yours will be in one place, somebody else's will be like an inch up or an inch over this way. Most of them, will be right on the center because they are connected to the crown chakra. But the positioning can be off by as much as an inch. So what you do in that case is it's the motion, the vibration of moving the area that's creating the electrical kind of like stimulation. Move the whole area. There's other ones that are even harder to find. I mean, the top of your head, you can actually just rub the top of your head enough that you'll hit the point and you'll stimulate it. After a while, you'll fine-tune it, where you'll just, okay, it's not doing it. I feel the energy there. You'll start to, after a while of using these points, feel more precisely where they're located. But in the meantime, you can still trigger their activation by getting the whole area stimulated. All right? Now, points 2 and 3 are at the temples. Spend a few minutes rubbing them. You rub them vigorously, but not to the point where you hurt them. When you hurt, you're saying, ow, that's good work. And if, again, you can't find exactly where it is, rub the whole area. Give yourself a sage massage. From points 2 and 3, you'll go to point 4, which is where the ninth chakra comes out, at the back of the head, back of the skull, base of the skull, right here. And that little spot that swells up when the ninth chakra is going crazy. And you would rub there. Now for headaches, some people will be getting headaches because they're running frequency. You can rub this point, and I wouldn't do it right now, but like that point and the one that's number 14 on the front. After we get done with this, if anybody has a headache, try that, okay? But in the meantime, we're down to number 4. This one, you may start to feel bursts of energy release when you start to rub at the base of the skull. Hit these areas too. These areas, not just the hollow part, but the areas right alongside of it. This is a good area to literally stimulate the whole thing, because here's where your kundalini builds up. All right, it's like a bottleneck in the kundalini flow. That and the base of the spine are 2 spots where you can get a lot of kundalini built up, and it creates pressure and tension, and the body tries to compensate for it, and you get stiff muscles, and you get headaches and things. All right, I know when I rub that point alone, the hair stands up on my arms. Anybody get that effect? I was like, okay. And I also get mental clarity. So even that point alone, or those 3 points alone, you can shift your focus into a more awake and aware and focused type of consciousness. After 4, go to 5 and 6 together. These would be right here. They're a little bit below the shoulders. These are some of those that are hard to find because they can be up to like 1.5 inches variance depending on who the person is. You'll find them by the ouch. Press around. You can find the ouch, kind of do this with your fingers, right? Put them in the area and push and rub. And you kind of find like, this little tender right there. There'll be tender spots. And part of that would be the lymphatic system that's building up toxins and poisons, and you press on it and it goes, yes, there's a hook in there. But then that will go numb really fast after you rub it, because it starts to disperse it. There will still be a tender spot left. And it's when you find that other tender spot that you're over the points that you need. At night is the best time. Your body's relaxed. Lay on your bed and start poking yourself. Try to find your points, because you can get, even more fine-tuned direct energy directly into them. If you can't find them yet, and you're not exactly sure because it's all sensitive now, you don't know which is the source point, just gently rub the whole area. Okay. You're going to be doing this on your clients too. You're doing it for other people. Then you go to 7 and 8, which are down here. Take where the hip bones are and just come in a little bit. They're basically over the ovaries area in women, and they're over the, what part of the body is that? I have to pronounce it interview. Uterus, yeah, in males. So basically, in any gender body, you go in from the hip bones, about an inch to an inch and a half. It's the locations, really, of the Kathara centers that are in there that you're rubbing on these. And rub those. These may be the hardest to find because we're usually so numb from here down, because we're not processing a lot of energy through our lower chakras the way our DNA is working right now. These you'll find better when you're laying down, because your muscles aren't tense from holding your body up. You'll be able to poke around and find them better. Meanwhile, you just rub the area. And the rubbing stimulates it. It starts to send vibration through it, and that's what's opening the Kathara centers underneath. Then you go, and this one feels really good for areas, sore legs, or like sitting in the office all day. Behind the knees. This one's easiest done where you don't have the muscles tense. You simply rub. And start with rubbing the whole area. What you're rubbing are the small chakras that are behind the knees. They tend to close down on most people unless they happen to be very athletic. People that run a lot or things like that, where they're using their lower body a lot, will have more open chakras in the back of the knees. But most people that are confined to a desk or any kind of job like that are going to have really tight and blocked up chakras. When you rub these, you may start to feel energy going up the legs and down the legs, little kind of bristly kind of energies. This is good. This means you're loosening up blocked energy that was back there. Anybody feel hot yet? One of the things you will start to feel when you do this is you'll progressively build heat. Because you're moving energy, you're opening energy in the body. Yeah. Okay. Then we get down to the 11 and 12 points. These are hard to get shoes on. Okay. You can take your shoes off and put your socks. It's worth doing it because you're not going to get the same energy feel if you don't. What it comes down to, if you just say, okay, well, I know it's down there, I'll do it when I'm home by myself. You can do that, but when we run energy tonight, you won't feel it as strong as if you activated all the points. So I would suggest taking the effort to take your shoes off. I'm going to powder with my shoes. And the idea is to rub them at the same time. So you can loosen one at a time up a little bit, and then bend over. So it's too hard to bend over while you're sitting in a chair. Kind of do it like this. Bottom and top. Foot like that. Bottom and top. You can put the thumb on the bottom over the chakra that would be at the sole of the foot. And the fingers on top. On both feet at the same time. Begin to rub. And this might hurt too. Because this is another area that's all blocked up and holds a lot of the disharmonic energies in the body. Just from lower leg, you'll have a lot of cooled energies hanging out in the feet. It's actually very good to run these points, even if you're not going to do a Kathara healing at the moment, just to let your body breathe. This helps to move and circulate the energy in the body, because it's bringing energy out. It's opening the windows for the Kathara centers in the body. Okay. Once you get done 11 and 12, you go to 13. Now 13 is here, in the heart chakra area. Just simply roll around. You'll find that too, because there's a sensitive spot in the center of it. Help. You're pressed too hard. But in the meantime, if you can't find the brow spot, just get the vibration moving, and it's good to do it in both directions. So you get, it's like it sends a different message both directions. It gives you both the electrical and the magnetic spin on it. Then you're like that. Then you go to the last one, which is your third eye, your sixth chakra. You can find this too, because after you do this for a while, you'll start to see colors when you hit it just right, like head on, there'll be a spot where, more than feeling an ouch spot, you'll start to see a spot where the blackness inside your eyes, when you close your eyes, starts to do stuff. It'll like a little burst of light, or sometimes it'll be like black background, or a little just color kind of moves through it. Until you can find that spot that releases the color, just rub the whole thing. That's very good for your face too. It's the energy moving through your tonal lines. Alright. Now that process just opened up the little windows in the Kathara centers, just enough to kick up some energy in your body. Does anybody feel any different after rubbing those points? Do you feel any energy moving?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody that doesn't? I mean, it's okay if you don't feel movement. Okay. How hard were you rubbing? I'm just curious. Was it real light, or were you using quite a bit of pressure, or? Well, you were using pressure. It's interesting. You should feel something. I'm wondering why, you didn't get any sensation yet. Maybe just you're not used to sensing that level of energy. I'm wondering. Okay. A little guidance for this, specifically for anybody that wasn't feeling much, if not anything at all. They just told me to do this. Rub again on the 9th, and then on a spot back here, which would correspond with the back of the 8th chakra. Okay? These are ones that are not in the book together. And to the back here where your 9th chakra comes out, point 4 on there. And then behind point 1, where you have that 8th chakra running up this way, coming out here, they're saying that this will stimulate the ability to sense more of it. You're working with the 8th and 9th frequencies. That'll open up some of the conduits. And they're saying about, all right, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, you should feel energy coming in from this person, from doing this, even if you haven't run the points. So that might be something else to remember too. If you want to energize yourself quickly, you don't have to go whooping yourself all over the place like if you're in the office. Take 2 seconds and rub those 2 spots. And rub them vigorously to get the energy moving. And then just let it be. And they said, depending on how much energy is blocked in those areas, between 5 and 15 minutes, you'll start to get a clearing just from that alone. Okay, it will amplify these as well. All right, so that was just in. I get a lot of that though. I never work at home. Anyway, okay. Now that we've done that, we already had from technique 2, we activated the Mahara shield and the Mahara shield, and we've been running the frequency ever since we did the liquid light cleanse. We have now begun the process of bringing the D12 frequency into the body. So our Kathara grid inside is charged at the moment. It has a charge of D12 subharmonics. Now we just amplified that by opening the windows in the Kathara centers more, which means they're going to pull. As we open those centers by rubbing these places, what it's going to do is create a little stronger suction of the Kathara centers pulling the frequency, the D12 frequency, from the earth core, from your chakra 13 up to chakra 12 and into your body. So it's increasing the Kathara grid's ability to inhale energy. Now, if we went to the closing down points, that would be the ones after this, we would again bring it up. This would bring the energy out of the Kathara grid and up to here, and it would help in facilitating, charging the outer field. But we can do that, and in a client session, you wouldn't do that till the end, till after you did whatever you were going to do with the client. So what we're going to do is we'll come back to the closing points, the points you would use to close. You have to bring energy up here, and then that would be like the ending of the session, recharge the outer fields, and then stop the currents and let them go. We're going to leave the peace centers after, because it won't hurt to do that. It'll just help to amplify your field. Another thing you can do in the morning if you're feeling really sluggish, use these points, the 14 points, and just go about your day. It'll help bring in more of the energy on autopilot. All right. So we're going to go. We're going to come back to the 6 sequence 2 Kathara points after we do a number of other things. Now, let me see. I'm going to go to next. I'm going to get you into the triadic phase currents, because this is the key to healing facilitation, is learning to run the triadic phase currents. It's also going to be a new experience for your body, because your body probably is not used to running a triadic current. A triadic current is composed of 3 elements, but it's not just any 3 elements. It's a current that's composed of the Maharata frequency, the D12 subharmonic tail silver frequency, then one frequency from density 2 and one from density 3. There's a relationship between those frequencies, and there's a way to activate them in the body. And because we usually don't know what they are, we usually have not run in the bodies we have right now. We haven't run those currents yet. So it's a beginning process. That's why you don't start with activating the oversoul current first, because it actually won't activate because you don't have the lower portions of the DNA strand templates active to receive that energy. So we start with what's called the rated phase 1 current. Now to get into the currents, it's interesting to explore identity. Because what you're using, what these currents are a part of your natural energy identity structure. Go to page 162 in the manual. That's page 78 on the diagrams. Here's what we learned about. We've already learned about blue bodies. There's 3 to 5 three-dimensional areas of energy and the shields that correspond to their anatomy. This is where we begin to realize that this is part of our identity as well as our anatomy. That's part of our consciousness. Now, we're getting an understanding more about the blue bodies and that energy, because this is the energy we're drawing on. It's not some mysterious force source of the universe where we're pulling energy and we don't know what it is. This is where we learn what parts of ourselves are where and how we're going to get these currents in. Because it's your currents that you're using to heal. Because you have a station of identity in each of the density levels, if you can open the part of you that's here to that part of you that's there, that part of you that's there can draw frequency from that level and bring it down into your body. It's a cooperative healing effort between you, your soul or oversoul, and your Christos level self. And it's a natural healing method that we're all supposed to be able to do. We always used to do it when our bodies were working the right way. So the human anatomy is a 15-dimensional scalar wave construct. Part of our identity exists simultaneously within the time cycles of the higher dimensional harmonic universes. What that statement means is that right now, as we speak, time is simultaneous. You have other incarnations, as we talked about before. You have 1,728 cells. They're all simultaneously manifest with you. But they're not just manifest in density 1. They're manifest. You have cells that are made of semi-etheric matter density. You have cells that are made of etheric matter density. You have cells right now that are still part. They never left the Christos station. They're still pre-matter liquid light. And you have cells that are Rishis and ascended masters too. The process of becoming whole is simply opening the body to be able to embody the rest of you. The rest of you is composed of frequency. It takes the form of frequency. Your consciousness exists as frequency. Frequency we're referring to are scalar frequency. Standing, calm, and waves that form the scalar grid templates. The manifestation template. That is the form that your consciousness in those dimensional stations takes on. So when we're working with energy, we're working with identity as well. There's a lot of fun things you can do once you start to realize this. Like you can visualize a symbol, a color of blue if you want to play with D5. And say, speak to me, symbol. You've created a waveform, and that will allow, it's a conscious waveform. You created life by thinking that symbol. Every thought you think, you're actually creating life. Now, it may not be life that walks around in the human body, but what you're doing is creating a scalar grid. Every thought you think creates a scalar grid template. And if you think it in the third dimension, it will appear as part of the third dimensional unified field. That means somebody in fourth dimensional consciousness will be able to see it as a real thing. Because we perceive as physically manifest that which is exactly one-dimensional frequency man for lower station of consciousness. If we are in fourth strand of activation, we would be in fourth dimensional consciousness. Therefore, we would perceive as physical and real and external what is contained within the three-dimensional frequency field. That goes for us as individuals. It goes for our whole planet. Right now, most people are between a 3 and a 3.5 DNA strand activation level. That's the average mean of the races on the planet. That would mean that they're in 3 to 3.5 dimensional consciousness, which would mean what we're seeing as real and physical are the forms of energy that exist in dimension 2 to 2.5. We can learn to see to expand our perceptions by expanding the level of consciousness we're coming from. Now, if what we're looking at when we look at the world, all these things that we see as solid objects and things outside of ourselves, including our body, which appears to be aside from ourselves, but we're in it, right? These are actually, there is no dimensionality to it. That is a hologram. What is real here is an energy field. There is no connection, there is no space between these objects. In the reality of what this field is, it's a field of energy with a whole bunch of different mathematical signatures. And each one of those mathematical signatures is a being. Each one of you would be a different mathematical signature of energy in a unified field, and the space around you would be another mathematical field of energy. But we're perceiving things as separate. There's space between objects, and when there's a difference between you and me in our body forms, and where we feel like we're physical and separate from being non-physical. This is a holographic experience that's created by one level of the consciousness looking at the other levels of consciousness from here. So right now, what we'll do too, while we're working with these currents, you're going to shift your state of consciousness. You won't immediately start to see things that are hanging out in D4. Believe me, it's not a place you want to immediately get to know. You want to do D4 real slow because there's some really stuff that hangs out there. By the process of activating the currents, healing currents in the body, you are also going to begin to activate the strand templates that allow that current to come down into the body. Once it's in the body, you just hit a strand activation level. It's a little different, which means it's going to change the focus of your conscious awareness, which means you will be able to begin to see a broader spectrum. If you can get yourself up to a point where your consciousness is stationed fully in D5, you will be able to close your eyes and see the astral realm, which means when you're walking around down here, it's kind of interesting, because until we get our DNA completely cleared out, we can't fully disappear from here and pop up in the astral and then we have no lie about it. All right. What you do is get simultaneous perception, where you learn you can put yourself in D4 consciousness anytime you want to, and have two of you running around simultaneously awake and aware. This is very useful in healing. It's like having a mentor, but even better, because it has its own body. Right? These are some of the potentials. But as you're working with healing currents, there's a lot more to healing than simply, well, I know how to run frequency, so I can help you get better. That's part of it, and that's a very important part. But realizing that the process of learning to facilitate healing in yourself and in anyone else is going to take you into whole new worlds of perception. Because to become a good healing facilitator who has the ability to run the currents that can make a difference, it implies your consciousness will have to expand. Why? Because your DNA has to activate to get those currents, and those currents hold consciousness. So you are expanding yourself. You are integrating spiritually as you work with these currents. Now, let me see if it is downstairs. So, okay. Page 143 is about 79. It's probably the next one right now.
Can I ask you one thing? What does it specifically mean, scalar wave? What's scalar wave?
Okay, you weren't here yesterday.
No.
I didn't think so. Okay, we covered that kind of intensively yesterday. I will try to explain it in a nutshell without taking 20 minutes to do it like I had to yesterday. Oh, okay, it's page 79 on the graphs, the top sequence. Yeah. A scalar wave. Here we go. Yeah, oh boy. Okay. Backtrack back to that part of the lecture. It's like a tape. When I'm on day 2, day 1, I have to backtrack and rewind the tape. All right. A scalar wave is a standing columnar wave, which means it looks like a column of light. It's a wave that stands vertically, not horizontally. It doesn't move from one place to another. It stands upright, and it flashes off and on. Scalar waves are the core template. What our core blueprint is made out of that allows the matter to manifest. We have a template that's made of millions and millions and millions and millions of scalar waves that are arranged in very specific relationships to each other. The whole universe is created on scalar wave grids. Scalar waves are the form that consciousness takes to come into manifestation. It anchors, it's a form that consciousness anchors into dimensionalization through. And through that, you are able to experience the illusion of space, time, matter, holographic perception. So this was a big discussion we had, so I'm trying to capsulize it. to answer the scalar wave question. The easiest way to look at it is a little flame, like on a candle. So pretend you have, just for keep it small, let's say we have 20 little candles lined up in a row, okay? And those 20 candles would represent a dimensional frequency band. And they all have a little flame on them, okay? Now there's lots more than 20. But those little flames, did you ever see the candles that you blow them out that come back on anyway? The trick candles, you know, that you can drive kids cookie with and they try to blow out the birthday cake? Well, it's kind of like that. You light them and they stay on. They blow out, they go off, they come back on again. They're little flames, columnar waves that make a column of light that flash on and off and bring energy into and out of manifestation. When they flash on, they form light, points of light, and they're transmitting, bringing energy in. And then they flash off, and they're taking energy out of the system. This is how part of the process by which energy circulates into, or consciousness energy circulates into and out of manifestation. So when I talk about scalar waves, just picture them as the substance, the primal substance, out of which our whole manifest being emerges into expression from. All right, if you want to know more about scalar waves, there's reading in the front of this book that explains it in more technical terms. But the easy way is to think of candle lights or light bulbs. Light bulbs are good. Just flip a switch on and off, on and off, on and off. Every dimension has, say, a set of 20 light bulbs that they're on. Okay, you have 20 light bulbs, and in dimension, that's dimension 1, you have 20 light bulbs in dimension 2, plus twice that, so half what was in dimension 1. And they all go on and off at a different rate. It's called a flash line sequence. So if you hear me use that term, that's what I'm referring to. The on and off, how fast these little points of light go on and off. It's called the pulsation rhythm or the flash line sequence. When we go into the dimensional scale, from dimensions 1 to 15, dimension 15 would have the highest flash line sequence. It would go the fastest. Turning the light switch on and off, on and off, on and off. So the little waves would go on and off, on and off. Down in dimension 1, they would be the slowest. All right, that's when I'm talking about scalar waves. That's basically the basic thing that I'm talking about. There's a lot more to that. If you do it in sequence in the book, it's a lot easier. You know? All right. Well, I want to get into is a little bit on, so you understand when you're running these currents, you're working with another station of your own identity as well as other frequencies. On this page, we have Hula bodies, platforms of perception. Now, and it was yesterday, we got into it again today, we covered it earlier too. These are those 5 levels of energy that surround the body, each is a 3-dimensional level of energy. They're the Hula bodies. The non-Hula body for density 1, dimensions 1, 2, and 3. The alpha Hula body for density 2, dimensions 4, 5, 6. Do this one. The beta Hula body for density 3, dimensions 7, 8, 9. The Mahara Hula body for density 4. Dimensions 10, 11, 12, and the Raja Hula body for density 5. Now, we usually don't worry about using the Raja Hula body until we have the Mahara Hula body, which is a Christo self, fully activated. This is changing because of certain conditions on the planet that have required more frequency. They are teaching in the roundtables work how to actually figure on frequency from the 5th level as well. You still need to activate 14 of the levels below. But these are literally energy fields that you're walking around in. They form your auric field, and they form from the shields that we talked about. That you have those scalar shields, 3-dimensional scalar grids that hold and anchor that portion of your consciousness into dimensionalized reality. This is what you're going to be using. These frequencies, they're all fields of frequency that come with you. It's like, this is why you don't need to go look for where God might be. God is always with you, because when you go past this level, you go into the energy matrix, which are the sound fields, and when you expand one more level, you're in a one with source. You cannot be separate from source. So you're using source energy, and you're using your energy. You're using your energy and source energy as one, when you're using healing currents. When we talk about triadic phase currents, we're talking about pulling frequency from specific levels. The Duradic phase 1 current is a density 2 current. Now, mostly what our bodies are running on right now are the currents that go with the Nada Hula body, the dimensions 1, 2, and 3, primal light force currents. They're the slowest flash line currents. They have the longest wavelength, and they have the least trust in energy. What we start with when we want to bring in higher healing currents, stronger ones, is progressively expanding into and opening these frequencies into the body. The next stage would be to work with the soul currents, because this level, number 2, your alpha body, is the level of conscious identity that for millions of years historically people have called their soul, or translations of that word. Alright? I'll show you a chart in a minute that shows you the levels of identity. But what we're going to do in activating the Doradic currents. Doradic is a word that comes out of Dora. Dora is an ancient word that meant soul. And it referred to the specific part of you and the specific part of the planet or the universe that is known as density 2, dimensions 4, 5, and 6. The first thing we do is activate the 4th dimensional current. Now, you can't activate the 4th dimensional current just by saying, I'm in the 4th dimensional current. It doesn't work quite that way. I mean, if you listen to the Anunnaki teachings, they will teach you that you just will it and so it is. That's why people are still here. If that worked, they'd be gone already. You know? What you need to do to activate even 4th dimensional current in your body. First of all, you need something to release the seals. We talked about the crystal seals in and between the chakras. If you don't open those seals to allow the energy to come into the body, you're not going to get it. It's going to be hanging out in your field. It's with you all the time. But to get it to run through your body where you can use it in the three-dimensional reality field, you need to be able to open the seals. What does that is the D12 subharmonic frequency. So in order to open higher currents in the body, you absolutely must use the Mahara current. They will not open correctly. If you don't, you will not get the thrust that you otherwise would. And you can get a lot of other problems if you try to do it without using the Mahara current, because you'll be overriding the 12th subharmonic in each of the strands below, which creates crushing of certain portions of the scalar template. The sequence that we use to activate the healing currents is the safe sequence. It's the way it works with the natural structure of universal physics. There have been, in some ancient religions, ways of activating the Kundalini to get some of the higher currents to flow before the lower currents could process them. They didn't open the grounding base of the lower frequencies down here. They simply stimulate pieces of the DNA strand to pull or force through some of these higher currents. This is where people get really bad Kundalini activations, where they crash. Some of them go crazy because they get a burst of energy coming up erratically through the main vertical current, and it can literally short-circuit your brain. There are very dangerous practices. Playing with Kundalini without understanding its connection to the shields, to the DNA template, and to the natural order the things are supposed to be activated in this program. And I've not seen this with anything else on this planet, because nothing else so far in this time period has showed us what the dimensional structure is, the true dimensional structure. If you don't know what that structure is, you're not going to have a clue as to what sequence you're supposed to open things in. You're just like, you'd be like in a candy store, well, let's grab that one, let's try that, let's open that and see what happens. And you blow yourself up that way. This program will teach you how to open first these currents. Then there's a way, and we get into Kathara 2, where we actually start to open some of these, but very gently. Where they, once you have these open, the Doradic currents, all of these currents here, now remember, this is density 2, composed of dimensions 4, 5, and 6. That's 3 dimensions, a 3-dimensional current. It's a tri-phase current. Dimension 4 is one phase, dimension 5 is another phase, and dimension 6 is another phase. So what you have is this is the Doradic current. Doradic phase 1 is D4 current, right? Doradic phase 2 is D5 current. Doradic phase 3 is D6 current. Yes?
I can't visualize what a Hoover body looks like. Can you? I know you're showing it that way, but I mean, like a shield and a Hoover body, it's like this somehow? It's like the same.
Picture a big bubble around you. Okay, big bubble. Right? Okay, got your bubble. Then picture, let's play with the not a Hoover body. Okay, that would be the smallest one. That would be this one. Sphere of energy around the body, and the disc that goes with it. That disc comes out here. It's a circulating disc of energy that creates a circulating sphere of energy. So it's like being in a, I think they have some kind of strange amusement park thing you can do with that, where they suspend you in like this metal sphere you can roll around. Or picture yourself in like one of those gerbil balls. Did you ever see one of those? balls that they use for little racks and things to play in. Right. They're clear plastic balls, and they put the little guy in to get exercise, and they run around inside, they go all over the floor inside the ball. Well, we're in these bubbles of energy, okay? So does that help? The bubble of energy would be this way. It is three-dimensional, it's all around you, and you have this many levels of them. You have 5 levels of them, and each have a smaller level inside, and you can actually begin to feel where one stops and the next starts by moving your hands slowly. You can begin to feel your boundaries. But you have to do it real carefully. You skip one, you think around one, you're actually on the other. Okay?
And the shield part is comes out of the hips, or?
That is not the shield. No. All right, this is another version of the bubbles that are around you, the hooba bodies. And also shows, this also shows where it corresponds to actually tonal lines and things like that, which we don't need right now. The shields, where's the graph on the shields? I'm just going to try to help you out here in a minute. Let me go back to my note. Remember what page this one of the earlier ones. Okay, I see shields in there. It is page 70 in the book. That shows you your shields. And it also gives you a brief explanation of what a shield is. Okay?
Yeah.
So, we have our shields. In order to be able to draw current from, sorry, to begin to draw frequency from these areas into the body, you need to activate portions of the shield that corresponds with it. So when we're activating current and running the particular procedures that allow seals to open in the body, that allow chakras to open, that allow the Kathara grid to open, you're activating temporarily portions of that shield. There are periods of time in civilization where all the shields were always activated, and that's when they had full mastery over the body and its manifestation and demanifestation. But for now, when we go into activating the first level of Duratic phase 1 current in the body, that means we're going to start the activation of DNA strand 4. It means we're going to start the activation of the density 2 shield. So the shields are all connected to this. The hooba bodies, the shield, the DNA strands, the chakras, and the axiotonal lines. There was that graph where it showed the vertical lines running through. There's one of those each that correspond to the Duratic phase 1 current. That means there are lines of frequency that run through the body and little conduits of frequency that will carry that current, very specific ones. Lines of energy that will carry that current in the body. When we get into some of the Part-2 stuff, which we'll finish up with tomorrow, we're going to start actually pulling some of these subharmonics, which was some techniques that we were given because the planetary grids are in crisis state. And because we need to be able to hold enough frequency to protect ourselves, first of all, from being affected by what's happening in the planetary grids. You have to activate Duratic phase 1 in order to pull any of the higher ones. But then there's a subharmonic activation, little portions of this, little portions of this, little portions of this, little portions of this. It makes like a straw or a bridge of frequency that you can bring in, even if you don't have all the strands and shields activated here. You can bring in a little set of them, bring enough frequency in them. You give yourself some of the density 5 or Kira shape cardinal light for the current. They are stronger than any of the currents going downward. Because the higher you go in the dimensional frequency band, the stronger and more intense the current is, and the ability it has to override the ones below it. Okay. I think we can go on to page 145. This is where a simple graph that will show us where our selves are. Okay, if I have a soul self, where is that located? This graph shows you. It should be page 81 at top. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Very simply put, this diagram, remember we saw it a while back when we were talking about the context of healing. We started to learn about the 15-dimensional time matrix and that kind of thing, 15-dimensional system. Well, this is where you fit into that system. This is where your hooba bodies fit in. This would be your non-hooba body in harmonic universe 1 or density 1, dimensions 1, 2, and 3. And that's your basic incarnate self, the personality self that you know here. Now with that comes the rest of you, because really it's all those concentric circles. You have your incarnate self here, then there's your soul, then your oversoul, then your avatar, then your rishi, and then out of the time matrix you're ascended master. and then you're at one in the source. It's simply a process of expansion and contraction. You can never lose yourself. You know, people say, I lost myself, and I lost my connection to God. You lost awareness of it maybe, but you never lost it because you can't, because it's carried with you everywhere you go. You're never, ever alone in the universe, which is really comforting to know once you realize how true it is. You have parts of yourself, parts of your identity, going all the way up the dimensional scale in sets of three. Your three-dimensional self in density 1 is here, as you know yourself. In density 2, dimensions 4, 5, and 6, that's considered the soul matrix. That's where you have your soul level of identity. That's also the level you can call your angelic self. This tells you a little bit about things in the New Age movement, where it comes to and says, I'm an angel, or I'm an archangel, or I'm an Kathara, or I'm an ascended master. What you're having a lot, actually, is beings from here, D5, which aren't even fully integrated souls, saying, I'm an ascended master. I ascended from density 1, and they're pretending they're a lot higher up than they really are. If you know your identity structure, first of all, you don't become overly impressed by any ascended master, be it real or not, because you realize you have that level with you. You're not lesser. You might not have a contract this time to fully activate all of that consciousness, but you don't have to. You have it. It belongs to you. You can't get rid of it. You don't have to ever, ever, ever grovel to anybody else because they're supposedly superior to you. There's not one ascended master here anywhere in the universe, including the person that became known as Jesus Christ, that has one thing that's more important and more valuable than what each of you have. And that goes for everyone, particularly in human form. Human forms are very special. They have the 12th dimensional imprint with them. Even if it's messed up and not activated from birth, it's still there. That implies you have the conduits of frequency that connect to all of those levels of self. It's helpful to realize that everywhere you go, you take the universe with you. You're a piece of it. Each of these portions of yourself, just like you're having experiences here in density 1, you have portions of yourself experiencing things in each of those density levels. The portions that experience things up here, it's a completely different level of reality. At that point, you live with light. You just kind of like float around in it. It's wholeness. I can't even describe it, but it's a place you can go into. You can begin to, even if you meditate, just give the thought come in. I would like to feel what it feels like to be me here, right? I'd like to get in touch with that self of mine, that pre-matter liquid light self. There's an exercise you can do of feeling a silver self come down around you. And it's nobody but you. It's just you at that level. And leaning back into it, letting it lean forward into you, feeling kind of inside you and you're inside it. It will make you tingle when you play with this, because you are commanding frequency to come in. And your higher parts are very glad to have you remember that they're there, because your higher parts know that your process of growth and evolution here is about bringing yourself back together, so you are fully awakened in the body. Okay? You can learn to tap into each level of self. And a powerful way of doing that is running through currents. So as you heal or assist to heal other beings or things by projecting currents, you're progressively healing yourself every time you do it, because you're clearing more of the scalar shields and the DNA templates and the Kathara centers that allow progressively the expansion into these other identity stations. When we get up to the Rishi level, this is where you turn. If you were going to fully take the body up, you go from here, physical dense matter, you activate this set of strands with Kathara centers and all the things that go with them, and you would go into semi-etheric matter, and you find yourself what would look like a rose tear. Then you go into full etheric matter, which would be more like an oscillation of energy here. If you were going to see somebody in etheric matter density, you wouldn't even see them as a form, like a shape as a person or anything. You would see them as an oscillation, a movement of light in the air. You go up to here, you look with light, which you can't fully see from this dimensional level. It simply appears as fluid moving, almost kind of like mercury, but it's a much different quality to it. When you get up here, you're gaseous substance. You're just conscious air, and it's a great space to be, because it's an expansion. You could literally, there's no such thing as space at that point. There is no place in the whole entire creation that you can't instantly experience when you're in that state. When we activate the currents in the body for healing, we're facilitating the process of integrating these levels of identity. And that's what it means to become Christed. And this is what the person called Jesus Christ taught. That's why we got rid of his books. Because he was teaching you that you do not have to worship an external God ever, and that's not God's teachings. All right, that you should worship Put yourself below a grovel in front of anything or anyone. Anyone that's telling you you should is trying to mislead you. You want to ask why. What do they have to gain by doing this? This is the natural structure of your identity. You have it. Nobody can take it away from you, but you can be tricked into thinking you don't have it. That's what our cultures have been tricked into for many thousands of years. Worshipping gods outside of ourselves by this name, that name, and all sorts of other names who are going to punish us and be mean to us if we don't do what they want. But as long as we listen to them, they'll be nice and we'll get favors. We have been taught belief systems that have totally compromised our ability to integrate these levels of self, as if we have no right to have those levels of self. We have those levels of self because we were created by Source, by the one God that is encompassing of all being. We are manifestations of that Source. This is our heritage and our right. It's also required if we're going to heal, if we're going to run currents. You need to integrate these parts of identity. When you run the rated phase 1 current, you're going to activate this part of your alpha group of body, your density 2 group of body. You're going to activate the corresponding part of your density 2 shield. You're going to activate your axial lines 4 in the body. You're going to activate the 4th chakra, more fully in the body. Same thing if we're going toward the rated phase 2, which would be the 5th dimensional current, or the rated phase 3, the 6th dimensional current. The currents, the identity, and the body anatomy all go together. And it's kind of like, well, I don't want to believe I have all this identity parts and stuff out there because it's different than what the Bible taught me. But I'll believe in currents and healing. It's like you're contradicting yourself if you try to go there. And you're just setting up more conflict to try to figure out what you're really doing. It comes down to, this is the Holy Spirit that a lot of the people who are channeling healing frequency. Oh, I'm channeling the Holy Spirit, they say, in the transient frequency. Yeah, the Holy Spirit, the pillar of frequency, that opens progressively as your energy opens. They're no more holy than anybody else. We all have these structures. So this is the structure. These are the places from which we're pulling frequency when we begin the activation process. There's a little thing, I have to put it up on a board. It says stations of identity and levels of mind in the Hugo bodies yet.
What's the difference of knowing all this consciously or working, basically asking the Source to give whatever you need and go on evolving and going on approaching the Source without knowing consciously, because at the end you will know anyway? What's the difference of consciously knowing? Is that speed?
Consciously knowing, well, there's one real big advantage in this day and age. You can tell if it's really Source that's guiding you or not. If you don't understand your structure, your multidimensional structure, you can get guidance from Source. That is guidance that will take you on a learning course that you don't necessarily have to choose to go on. A course of learning to have enough responsibility for yourself. If you want to be a master ever, and if you come into the time matrix, which we all do, to learn to master it, part of it is responsibility for knowing our parts. And it's really, there are systems that teach, well, I'll just surrender it, which means I'll let somebody else do it for me. That is not a Christ-conscious attitude. It makes you feel better. Now, Source does have a plan for you. You, as Source, have given yourself a plan. Well, part of the plan is mastering the process of evolving here, where you fully become Source again. There are lessons to be learned in that process. You can surrender, and surrender is an important thing. But you have to know what you're surrendering to. If you surrender to Source in general, but you do not understand about a Maharic seal, if you do not understand this D12, not D5, this Christ consciousness, you can get misled by other people who know a little bit more about it. This is why it's important. Yes, we're all guided, but sometimes we're all misguided. And a part of ourselves allow that to happen, to teach us lessons where we become more responsible for learning mastery. We all came to learn mastery. There's the hard way to learn and the easy way to learn. The easy way isn't saying, well, I'll let Source handle it for me, I'll just trust and be a good little sheep and I will follow. This is what we've been taught to do, but that's not always the best thing. There's a big thing that's been cultivated in human consciousness, and unfortunately it's called laziness. Not that we won't go to work and do stuff to make sure we have a roof over our head and those kind of things, but when it comes to, I really have to run the current today, it becomes a chore. You think that, no, I shouldn't have to do that, God will do it for me. You are God. You're a walking manifestation of God. You should do it for yourself. This is part of the trickery. We were taught to let an angel, let God being a source up there someplace, we surrender everything to. We're not God, we're saying. When we do this, when you say, I will learn my currents because I am God and this is a part of my mastery, you are taking responsibility for yourself. And you're integrating the part of you that is at one with Source and knows itself as a manifestation of Source. When you say, well, I'll let God guide me and direct me, you've immediately made a distinction. God is one being, and you are something else. Which means you're immediately denying the knowing of you as Source, the I am presence. If you realize, so we talked about this yesterday a bit, about knowing yourself as a manifestation of the face of God. All right, knowing every other being too, as a manifestation of the face of God. When you know that, there is no other God to surrender it to. You say, fix it for me. It's you that's responsible. And it's you that has the power to create. Because you are the face of Source. And you were given, you gave yourself all the attributes that Source has. The attributes of creation. And obviously, Source has within itself the attribute of experiencing chaos. Because we're very capable of creating chaos too. There's a surrender factor that I think is what has to do with the question that you asked. There's a surrender and there's a responsibility. And there's a balance point between the two that needs to be found when you're dealing with any of this. You need to be able to say, I am God, therefore it's my responsibility. I will learn. I'll try to remember it somewhere. I already know. This is part of it. Yes, you do already know. You know exactly. It's all actually done at some point in time. But for you to experientially grow from the point you are right now into reclaiming that expansion where you already know all of the stuff and know how to do it, there's a series of openings to reconnect you here and that you there. That's where learning and integrating the knowledge that self has comes in. That's where you integrate more and more of your godness. So I think that's as most as I can do with that question right now.
Does prayer have a place?
Yes. Prayer is an interesting word. Yes, does prayer have a place? It depends on how you define prayer and how you use it. Do you say, dear God, someplace out there, I'm really trying to be good and I really want to just, let my will be thy will. Now I use that one. Let my will be thy will. Who am I talking to when I say this? Am I talking to a God that I feel I am a tiny, minute, little finite being, and it's a big God in the sky whose approval I really need to gain or I'm going to be in trouble? Who am I praying to? I believe more in the word of affirm. If you affirm, you are saying, I, as a representative expression of Source, am decreeing this. And I know in my connection and love of being a part of Source and all of this, that it shall be so. There's a difference between prayer, which comes down to begging most of the time, which means, I don't have any power, you have any power, so I will beg you. This is not only your God presence. Decreeing is a little better. You can pray in a sense of offering to the universe and to Source and to every living thing the intention of love and joy and giving. But are you going to do that from a passive sheep perspective, or are you going to acknowledge that you are a shepherd of yourself, and a shepherd that can influence others to find the shepherd within themselves? This is why prayer can be a deception. It can be good, but it can be a deception, depending on how it's worded. If it's, dear God, somebody away from me, outside of me, that are bigger than me, they have more power than me, and I can't figure out how to make this work, so I'm going to ask you if you please fix it for me. You are not owning your identity, or its potentials, or its knowledge, or its knowing. But if you're down here in your incarnate self, and you know you're a lot smaller than the rest of you that's up there, and you know there's a whole lot of stuff you just can't hold in your body right now, because your body's so small compared to how big you are, you still have the right to say, in complete cooperation with my wholeness as God, I decree that these things will happen if they are in divine right order, which I know in those levels of consciousness, but which I may not be able to fully understand while I'm in a small mind. Because consciousness is frequency, and I can't fit all the consciousness of the universe in my one body. Yes, I will miss things from this perspective. There is a difference, and it's an important difference. And if you go into the traditional way, you go in, the one thing that really, really gets under my skin is go into a church and bow down. Get on your knees. Why? You know, when I started doing this, I had one person do that to me. They felt the rishis come into my field when we were going to do some transmission for nations. And the person, very, loving person and very devout, very spiritual, felt the spirit, the living spirit, and felt them come in. And she went down on her knees. And I went down with her. I said, we don't have to do this. Okay. Oh, okay. I don't need to in the first place. It's a good question. It's a gesture of subservience. It's like, you're so much greater than me, I'm so lowly, which immediately says, I am not God. If you're not God, what are you? Thought form. Yes. Who's thought form? God. You are God. Okay. There's a lot of things. Our divine, holy, angelic, eternal self. And you cannot find it by chasing it as if it was outside of you. This is why, and when I was a priest, we have no conversations, actually. Interesting conversations, no. We don't even have conversations at this point. Because he's very full of himself. He wears a black suit with a white collar. Now, excuse me, you're supposed to respect me now. Okay, well, what do you know about it? Tell me. The Bible says this, and this. What do you know about this, and this? We're not allowed to question that. Why? They're told cannot question anything. In other words, be sheep. If God is so powerful and so all-consuming, why would he need to steal your power and have you be a sheep so he can drag you around? If it was a loving God and a loving source that genuinely created us in that image, wouldn't we have been given freedom and all the resources to express that source? There's a whole dictum that we need to, when we get into real healing, it's not just our bodies that need healing. It's our minds that need healing. Because we have been dragged around, our species has been dragged around for good 25,000 years on twisted teachings that take part of the truth that is admirable, part of the truth that were the original spirit teachings that help you to fully embody your I am presence, where you felt God with you and you knew you were a face of God. You didn't have an ego about it. You didn't walk around saying, I'm God, you're not. It wasn't about that. Because if you're God, so are you, and you, so are the animals, so is God. They're all faces of God. There was a way Cynthia wrote a book not too long ago. I remember seeing the title, Acting as if to God in all things matter. Reverence was a natural state of that. If you have reverence, you don't even need audible prayer. Because reverence is a feeling that's here, and it expands. And it is a love. There is a huge love when you start to understand the sacredness of other things in your universe. You will never, ever understand the sacredness of any other person, any other being, any experience you have, if you cannot understand the sacredness of yourself. It starts with you. Just like they say you can't love somebody genuinely if you do not love yourself. If you're stuck in martyrdom all the time, you will not be able to fully experience what it means to love. There's a whole range of healing that when we get into Kathara healing, you need to look at. Our belief systems have been as much responsible for keeping us enslaved as has been our gene code. Part of the condition that humans are in right now, and the fact that we've lost so much of our 12-span and higher potential, had to do with choices that we made. See, we've been victimized, but we're not victims. We allowed ourselves to be victimized, to teach ourselves certain things that we were obviously missing. We must have been missing them pretty good to put ourselves through 25,000 years of mental torture and amnesia, just to get back to the point where maybe we can understand now what we're trying to teach ourselves. Part of it was responsibility. It was very easy. See, this is how the fallen angelics got a hold on this place. We had Christ consciousness on our side. We loved everybody and everything. Totally. We couldn't imagine that one being would hurt another, because we never ever hurt another being. pretty colors and unique shapes and things they could have and things they could make. And got very enamored with the illusions and how fun they could be and the sensual things that you could feel with the bodies. There were choices made by our race that allowed certain basic rules of function to be compromised, that allowed the fallen angelics to come in. We won't even pay for it, those things. We're paying for our naivete. We're teaching ourselves a lesson. A lesson is about time it's over already. A lesson that there is responsibility that goes with spirit. And if you are created, which we were as an angelic race, to act like an angel means owning your godhood, your godship, being an expression of God. What I do a lot of times when I start workshops, I have always gone in, I'll have like an itinerary, so I have some clues to what we're going to teach. But there's an aspect to where they go. Every Kathara workshop is different from the last. These are the group of people. And something that the grid I set. I said, let my will be thy will. It's not a prayer. You can use me as a little sheep now. I'll be a vessel. It's acknowledging a part of me that's at one with Source, and the part of every one of you that's still at one with Source. I said, how can I serve them? Let my will be thy will. And I put up my Mahara seal so nobody else can come in and say, hi, I'm God, I want you to do this. Conversations with God and things. There are a lot of this stuff out there in the New Age. You better be real careful what God you're having conversations with. Because we've got them all talking right now. We've got Jehovah and Anu and a whole bunch of other ones coming through. We're your ancient gods, all of us. This is not the kind of God you need to deal with. There's a God that has its own name, just a single name. Wait a minute. God has infinite names. God is all things and in all things. You may be the face of God, yes. But why are you trying to pull a power trip on me? This is a lot of stuff that's coming through the news. When we're dealing with our multidimensional identity structure, we are dealing with our direct relationship to Source. There is a huge personality shift that we need to make if we're going to heal our minds. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, that's just mental body, intellectual stuff. I don't need to understand that because I'm spiritual. Which means I'm focused in my higher chakras and I haven't grounded any of it. Why? Because my mental body in D3 is twisted in knots, so you can't get any of this energy out into this part of the body. In other words, you can't integrate yourself. If you refuse to integrate and heal the mental body, you will block the flow of frequency. If you look at it in just basic physics terms, to get higher consciousness into the body, you cannot say, my body is an evil, pathetic thing, I throw it over here, I can't wait so I can die or I can escape from it because I'm a pure spiritual being, that's the only thing that makes me impure. There's a whole bunch of religious creeds out there that are down on the body. The body's sinful, it's dirty, it's evil. You will get nowhere as far as full integration without your body. If you leave it in death, you will get another. Then eventually you will accrete the energy left behind. If you leave a body here, there's pieces still in the planetary grids that will stop you from getting out of the time matrix. You will eventually pull that energy back into yourself, into a body form that you finally become Christed in, where you transmute all of that. But as long as you have any of yourself stuck in the planetary grids on any planet, you're going to be cycling in the time matrix for a while until you collect your pieces. This is your relationship to healing, running currents. And it's your relationship to Source as it was intended to be. And there is a shift where you can, and it's a shift that you feel here. And it's almost, I still move between it, because I've been conditioned, just like anybody else here, with the belief programming that's been there, where, okay, my mind can say, okay, I'll accept the fact that I am the living face of God, and that there's a lot of me I don't know yet. There's a lot of me I don't remember right now, and I will turn to those parts of myself that are more full of their guidance than I am, and ask for guidance. There's a big difference between that stance and being able to stand over and say, I am a vessel of Source. I'm simply a hologram standing before your eyes. I'm a hologram that is here simply to serve you and to serve this reality field as a representative of Source. Feel the difference in the power stance. When you feel the power in the fields, and we're not pushing much, there's a whole different stance to the mentality, the mental body, when it says, I'm just a representative of God here. I don't really know who God is, but I want to do really good and be a good little sheep. And I'm just trying to help. It's like a little kid behind the podium. They're just so full of love. And I want to help. This is where most people are coming from. And it's